2016 is an important year for the Congolese people. It's the year when President Kabila's second presidential term is supposed to come to an end, but it looks like he's doing whatever he can to stay in power. President Kabila's been in charge of Congo since the assassination of his father in 2001, and he's gradually consolidated his power and has taken control of the natural resource base. Congolese opposition has become mobilized. There is a lot of support for different opposition leaders such as Etienne Tshisekedi, Moise Katumbi, the former governor of the Katanga province, Vidal Kamere from Kivu. There is a lot of political discussion. The situation is, however, that the opposition is trying to do whatever it can to put pressure on President Kabila, the government, and Congo's international partners for elections to be held, but there's very, very little movement towards getting an electoral calendar, towards taking care of the technical aspects. There's still problems with the electoral rules. Now, the elections are not going to happen in 2016. I've argued elsewhere that President Kabila is more likely to be assassinated or removed by coup than to step down voluntarily. He's making too much money through the control of natural resources, particularly the mining sector and oil. So there's no incentive for him to leave, and many of his supporters in Congo consider that he's the logical person to stay in power because they're benefiting from power networks that enable him and themselves to gain substantial financial benefits. There's people from the outside as well. For example, the Israeli businessman Dan Gedler, who's been very, very close to Kabila and involved in a number of mining and oil deals. All this is to say that the elections are not going to take place in 2016, and the Congolese people have shown considerable maturity in the way that they've been trying to engage in dialogue. I don't think that the absence of elections in 2016 is going to lead to violence or considerable violence. There's going to be a lot of grumbling. There could be some demonstrations, but history has shown that the Congolese are not really willing to lay down their lives for politics. How can this be explained? Probably because of the fact that after so many years of a difficult colonial rule, 32 years of the Mobutu dictatorship, wars of liberation, and then civil war and wars of aggression against the Congo. And then more recently, a very difficult political transition has meant that Congolese people expect relatively little from the state and from public services. They've learned to fend by themselves. The second chapter that is of really important magnitude in the Congolese context today is that the opposition is doing whatever it can to put pressure to take power, but they haven't designed any social agenda, any economic plans, any diplomatic strategies. So it seems that the opposition people pretty much want to do the same thing that Kabila is doing. how can we explain this? I'd say it has a lot to do with Congo's environmental and natural wealth. Congo's Environmental Paradox, book that came out a few months ago, 2016, deals with the paradox that Congo is one of the richest countries in the world with respect to natural resources, but its population is amongst the poorest in the world. So this book looks at natural resources sector by sector, so we're talking about forestry, land and agriculture, oil, water, and mining. These are the 5 sectors that I've examined in this book. And the originality is not to just present an inventory of natural resources, but to look at the way Congolese authorities with international partners should think about how best to manage these resources. And I've tried to do so in a holistic way, meaning that you can't manage Congo's forest resources without looking at how agricultural practices exist. You can't stop deforestation without looking at energy, because why do people cut down trees, particularly in peri-urban areas, is because only 9% of the Congolese population has access to electricity. So, of course, they need to use charcoal for their cooking. But industrial mining also is very, very energy dependent. President Kabila has tried to ban the export of unprocessed minerals. The economic operators say, okay, fine, we'll process them because that's where the economic value is, but we need energy to do so. So this all has to do with the need to create hydroelectric facilities. Congo has 13% of the world's hydroelectric potential, but it's very, very underexploited. There are something like 750 hydroelectric sites that could be developed. Inga, one hydroelectric site, could light up the entire African continent, but again, it's underexploited. Agriculture is another sector that needs to be looked at in a holistic way. Congo's farmers could feed the equivalent of 1 billion people, or all of Africa's population. But again, these sectors are poorly managed and they're done sector by sector. They're silos on a landscape that doesn't look at horizontal connections. So what I've done in Congo's Environmental Paradox is to trace the history of how natural resources were managed in the past, to present what the resources are, and policy strategies that could help in improving the management of these resources for the benefit of the Congolese people. There's a long way to go before this is going to happen, because there are some very serious structural challenges. Infrastructure, for example, is not sufficient to get to manage natural resources in a profitable way at this time. There's a huge need for capacity building. Local administrations do not have the work mentality, the ethic, or the capacity to manage agriculture or mining or oil in a way that's needed in the 21st century. The dugout canoe is still the principal source of transportation in Congo. This is a bit of an aberration, because if you want to take advantage, if you want to capitalize and to create wealth with these natural resources, you need a qualified administrative framework, and you need infrastructure, and you need the support of the private sector. And here, the World Bank's reports doing business in Africa point to very, very serious handicaps in doing business in Africa. So all of these challenges mean that that Congo's natural resources are underexploited. Now, fortunately for the population, things like forestry and agriculture provide them with sustenance, because if they did not have these resources, they'd be even poorer than they are today. Conversely, the government and people close to the president are reaping tremendous advantages from the mining sector and from the oil sector. Many people know very, very little about Congolese oil, but it is in fact the third most important source of export revenue after copper and cobalt. So these are the things that I've looked at in Congo's environmental paradox: potential and predation in a land of plenty, published by Z Books in London. Congo has the natural resources the world needs. Its forests count in the fight against global climate change, and its mining sector helps satisfy our addiction to the latest high-tech gadgets. Congo's farmers could feed all of Africa's population of over 1 billion people. The Inga hydroelectric site has the potential to light up the entire continent. These realities are defining the country's strategic place in a globalized world. Telling a different story about power and nature, Congo's environmental paradox examines the dynamics of this huge country's forest, mining, land, water, and oil sectors in an integrated way. It connects the dots by emphasizing resource diversity, interlinkages in the complex nature of these sectors. Congo's incredible natural wealth has the potential to contribute to development in this troubled Central African country. But structural problems, cultural factors, poor governance, and predation remain serious challenges. Clearly written, full of environmental facts and analysis, this volume is a must-read for anyone interested in development and the political economy of natural resource management in Africa. I'm pessimistic for the coming months in DRC. Pessimistic for the Congolese people that have been taken hostage to an inappropriate political process. They can't trust the opposition, they can't trust the government, and they're just forced to fend for themselves. It's something that they've been doing for a very, very long time. So the coming months in Congo will be a period of frustration. There's not going to be much social progress, which is another tremendous paradox, because even though for the past 10 years or so Congo has been tallying up significant growth, we're talking about approximately 8% growth per year for the past few years, social indicators testify to very, very little progress on the social level. So this is typically what we call growth without development. And I think this will be the trend in the coming months and in the next couple of years, is that the political economy of DRC will be controlled by actors that continue to benefit at the expense of the Congolese people. Thank you very much.